The early efforts to form a county occurred in the first decade of the 1800s when a group of citizens in Uniontown started a newspaper and petitioned Annapolis to form Union County with Uniontown as the county seat.
And over the next couple decades, the movement got stronger until by the 1830s there were really serious considerations of creating a new county out of the western part of Baltimore County and the eastern part of Frederick County. So the state legislature passed a bill that allowed for the creation of a new county, but only if the people who lived in the area that would be affected voted in favor of it.
Within the proposed area for the new county, towns like Libertytown and New Market would remain part of Frederick County, while Mount Airy would end up straddling the border, with the earliest part of the town falling inside the boundary of the new county. The town of Manchester, however, was totally against the formation of a new county, preferring to conduct its business in Baltimore County.
By that time, most of the citizens who wanted the county were in Westminster, and they petitioned the General Assembly in 1833, but lost, and the citizens of Manchester were so happy that the county wasn't formed that they set off their cannons pointed towards Westminster.
And they drug a cannon up on the hill, Catholic Hill, actually where I grew up, and fired a victory shot at Westminster.
But by 1837, the General Assembly decided that yes, there was efficiency that could be gained by Westminster as a county seat, and they named the new county in honor of Charles Carroll of Carrollton, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
Westminster grew to become a commercial center, as well as the center for the county's government. The new legislation mandated that the town build 3 specific buildings: a courthouse, a jail, and an almshouse. The courthouse construction began in 1838 on land donated by Isaac Shriver, a local businessman, and was designed by James Shellman, a local attorney.
We have one of the oldest courthouses in the state, and I believe it's probably the oldest one still in regular use.
The almshouse was built on about 300 acres of farmland and was opened in 1852.
The purpose of an almshouse was to care for people who could not care for themselves, and they came from all walks of life, and they were all different ages. The residents who could work worked on the farm. There was a number of residents who could not work, so they would just be cared for. The county paid for all of the seeds and equipment and calves and anything that they needed.
A steward and his wife ran the almshouse. The household included cooks, laundresses, a fireman who kept the fireplaces and wood stoves burning, and a teamster who drove the teams of horses for the wagons and farm equipment. All of the meat and produce grown on the farm was to feed the residents, as well as having enough to sell to the community.
The almshouse started with the main structure for the women and children, and also for serving food and meeting the public. And then the dormitory was added for the men to live in, and that with their separate sitting room, with a summer kitchen, and that was a place to take baths. Unusual thing about this almshouse is everyone took a bath twice a week. Very highly unusual for the time. The almshouse did go until 1965. Gradually, other systems of aid came into play, and fewer residents lived here. It was finally closed, and then the county wisely decided to turn it into a farm museum, or Museum of Rural Agriculture in Carroll County, before that was lost.
The county's towns continued to prosper. When the B&O Railroad extended west, it skirted the southern border of the county, and the towns along its path saw tremendous growth. Sykesville was a town that balanced a diverse economy and benefited from the services that the railroad brought to the area.
The area was primarily agrarian. We had a lot of farmers in the area who specialized really in corn-based crops. Well, Sykesville sort of existed as farm areas up until the mid-1820s, when James Sykes moved into town and bought up a mill property on the southern side of the Patapsco River. And over the course of the next 10 to 20 years, he bought up about 1,000 acres and restored the mill that was there. It turned it into the Howard Cotton Factory, and started producing woolen and cloth materials. In 1831, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad started to come through town. And with the railroad came suddenly whole new avenues to be able to ship crops, to have other people coming into town, to be able to go out and visit other people. So it really opened Sykesville up to the rest of the world.
The B&O also served Mount Airy.
In 1830, the railroad ran from Baltimore to the Mount Airy area, and at that time, when he got out here to the high part of the ridge, Parr's Ridge, it was extremely difficult to navigate that height. Then it got so difficult to get the cars up over that hill that they decided to go around it. So that's when they came through Mount Airy. And then in the meantime, they built the tunnel.
By 1839, more powerful engines had been built that carried heavier loads. To bypass the dreaded plains, the railroad constructed a spur line that went through Mount Airy, and the town grew in population and new business. The Baltimore, Carroll, and Frederick Railroad was incorporated in May 1852. This new railroad would come to serve the county's interior.
The name of the railroad was changed the following year to the Western Maryland Railroad, and construction started in 1857. The first segment of the railroad, which was only 10 miles long, was opened in 1859, and this was in Baltimore County. The railroad was then extended westward into Carroll County, to Westminster in about 1861, and to Union Bridge in 1862. Union Bridge remained the western terminus of the railroad throughout the rest of the Civil War.
The Civil War years were difficult for Carroll County. Some people thought that we should have seceded. Others were in favor of staying with the Union.
Carroll County became a crossroads by design of the commander of the Army of the Potomac, the Union Army. So when you're looking as to how you're going to distribute your manpower and equipment and ammunition, it's a perfect fit to be able to move either north, south, east, or west through the entire county. So it was a time where when Abraham Lincoln made the first call for volunteers in 1861, it was expected if you were a young, able male that you would go off and serve your country. Throughout Carroll County, there were several dozen blacks who went off and joined various regiments.
And one of the most notable ones was a gentleman by the name of Simon Murdoch. Now Murdoch had joined the Army, and he was in the 4th U.S. Colored Troops.
General George D. Meade was appointed commander of the Army of the Potomac, which would eventually go on to fight General Lee in Pennsylvania. He decided to lay out a plan whereby he could move his 60,000 troops out of the Frederick, Maryland area, move them across Carroll County to form a potential line of battle to defend Washington and Baltimore at all costs. So General Meade devised what he called the Pipe Creek Line. The left of the line would have been at Middleburg, the right of the line would have been at Manchester. Union Mills would have been the center, Tawnytown would have been headquarters, and Westminster would have been the supply base, due to the Western Maryland Railroad being completed at Westminster in June of 1861.
Meade had drawn a temporary line along Pipe Creek. He thought that if he was going to fight the South, that would be the place that he would fight, but of course things didn't work out that way. Tawnytown didn't become Gettysburg. Now the Harney Road was a supply route for things being taken up to the battle. The Lutheran Church tower was used as a signal tower.
By using the tower of the Lutheran Church, the steeple, and a number of high buildings in the area, they were able to actually set up a signal system back and forth to Gettysburg to the Round Tops. And by using a system of flags, they were able to do some communications back and forth. Corbu's charge was an important small engagement prior to the Gettysburg campaign, which many historians believe helped to alter the outcome of the Battle of Gettysburg. The detachment of the 1st Delaware Cavalry, 101 enlisted men and 7 officers, were sent to Westminster. Captain Charles Corbett was one of the company commanders. They made their headquarters on what was then called the Commons. Now, that is the campus of McDaniel College. On the afternoon of June 29th, little did the 1st Delaware Cavalry or anyone in Westminster realize that General Jeb Stuart had crossed the Potomac River on the night of June 27th into the early hours of June 28th with 5,400 cavalrymen and 6 pieces of artillery. He was making a march to rendezvous with General Lee's army in Pennsylvania. As he marched through Maryland, little did he realize that he was right on the collision course with the 1st Delaware Cavalry at Westminster. And due to the tenacity and the courage of the 1st Delaware Cavalry, they were able to slow down Stuart's advance enough, which caused him further delay in achieving his goal of arriving at Gettysburg.
General Stuart was forced to spend the night in Westminster in order to calculate his losses in horses and ammunition and attend to his casualties, while his troops camped at the Union Mills homestead.
One of the most interesting things about the brothers here at Union Mills in the Civil War days was that William, on the one side of the road, was a Confederate sympathizer and entertained Jeb Stuart's troops when they were here on the property. But his brother, Andrew Kaiser Shriver, was a Union man.
And then they actually had the chance to stand up for their views when the Confederate soldiers arrived here right before the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. And then Jeb Stuart arrived, and he was entertained at William's family's home before they departed on to the battle. Right behind Jeb Stuart's men were the infantry, Sykes's 5th Corps, and a division commanded by General Barnes spent the night here at Union Mills and then departed on to Gettysburg. So just 4 hours separated the Confederate and the Union troops here in Union Mills.
With what happened in Corbett's charge, plus a number of other incidences along the march, Stuart did not arrive in Gettysburg until the afternoon of July 2nd. Consequently, General Lee had lost all the advantage that he started off with on July 1st.
After the Battle of Gettysburg, the Western Maryland Railroad, formerly used as a major supply line, now became the primary transport to Baltimore for the thousands of prisoners being marched down from Gettysburg to Westminster and Union Bridge. Tens of thousands of wounded men were brought to both Westminster and Union Bridge to be sent on to Baltimore and Washington.
There were so many wounded that a track in the yard at Union Bridge became known as the hospital track, and it is still known as that today.
Both the returning soldiers and the newly freed slaves found themselves at a crossroads as they struggled to begin the process of reestablishing contact with family and friends, rebuilding their lives, and looking to the future.